All right, picture this. You've just told your little one no to a cookie, or, I don't know, maybe it's time to leave a super fun birthday party. And suddenly, boom, your child is on the floor, completely, absolutely inconsolable. Now, our immediate instinct is to assume that this tantrum started the exact second the screaming began, right? Well, what if I told you that wasn't the case at all? We're diving right into this today in our explainer. Because the reality, and this is backed deeply by neuroscience, is that the meltdown probably started 20 whole minutes earlier. Yeah, 20 minutes. By the time you actually see those tears, your child's nervous system has already hit an invisible wall. It's reached its absolute input limit. So today, we're going to completely flip the script on how you view these intense moments. We're moving away from just seeing bad behavior, and instead, we're going to learn how to read the really subtle, quiet signs of a little brain that has simply just run out of processing power.
So, here's our game plan for this explainer. We are going to look at the anatomy of a tantrum, check out what we call the sensory dashboard, and then identify 5 key signs of overload. After that, I'm going to give you a super actionable 60-second reset tool. And we'll wrap up by looking at how all of this helps build a lifelong brain bond. Let's get to it.
Okay, part 1, anatomy of a tantrum. Let's look beyond just bad behavior.
We really need to absolutely dismantle this myth that a screaming toddler, right in the middle of the grocery store is just being difficult or stubborn. Because here's the truth, these aren't behavioral problems at all. The meltdown actually kicks off when the nervous system hits an invisible red line. We miss it all the time because, well, we've been conditioned to just look for bad behavior. But when a child crosses this line, they're experiencing massive emotional and sensory overload. Their brain has literally run out of the juice required to process what's going on around them.
To really wrap our heads around why this happens, just take a look at this number, 1 million. During the first 3 years of life, your child's brain is basically a superpower. It's in a state of extraordinary plasticity, literally forming over 1 million neural connections every single second. 1 million per second. It's absolutely awe-inspiring. But there's a huge catch to all this incredible growth. Their nervous system? It doesn't come with an off switch yet. They take every single thing in, and they literally have to borrow your regulated nervous system just to find their way back to a state of calm.
Which brings us to part 2, the sensory dashboard. It's all about managing those invisible dials. So, how do you actually know when your kid's brain is starting to, skid off the tracks? You really have to picture how they experience sensory input. Think of their sensory system like a giant dashboard in a car, complete with volume controls for sound, light, touch, and even internal feelings. Now, as adults, our controls are mostly resting at a pretty safe, manageable middle level. We can filter things out. But for a developing brain, oh man, those dials can suddenly just spin all the way up to max volume with zero warning. And when that happens, the everyday world stops being normal. It suddenly feels like they're trapped in a really fast-paced action movie with way too many characters and incredibly loud, crashing music. Just totally overwhelming. So, to stay safe in that intense environment, their brain starts sending out these quiet little distress signals.
And that leads us right into part 3, the 5 signs of overload. Let's learn how to spot these signals. All right, this is basically the core toolkit of our explainer today. If you can spot these 5 signals, you can literally stop a tantrum before it even starts. The first one, and probably the most common, is gaze aversion. You know the scene. You've been playing with your toddler, making silly faces, having a blast, and suddenly they just turn their head and stare blankly at the wall. Now, our parental instinct is usually to try and pull their attention back, right? We might wave our hands, maybe make a funny loud noise. Don't do it. Actually, they are performing a system reset. They are literally trying to shut out the lights, the voices, the movement, just because it's way too much for them. If you try to force eye contact in that moment, you aren't actually connecting with them. You're just overloading a circuit that is already sparking.
Moving on to sign number 2, physical rigidness. You'll often see this as them arching their back. Imagine you go to pick up your child, and instead of just melting into your shoulder like usual, their body feels like a stiff wooden board, or they violently arch backward. Now, if an adult did that, we'd immediately label it as rejection. But in a child, this is pure, raw physiology. Their nervous system has just shifted into threat mode. Their muscles tense up because their brain has triggered a fight-or-flight survival state, and its only objective right then is finding some physical space. Next up is the pause-cry pattern. Now, listen, this is vastly different from when they're crying because they're hungry or in pain. An overstimulation cry has a really distinct rhythmic pattern. It goes like this. They cry intensely, then fall completely silent for a few seconds, often shutting their eyes tight to find a sort of zero input zone, and then, boom, they cry intensely again.
The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that the pause is their brain desperately trying to deplete that sensory charge. If you respond to this specific rhythm by bouncing them up and down or singing loudly to cheer them up, you're actually just extending the meltdown. They really don't need more input right then. They desperately need less.
Sign number 4 is stimming, or repetitive movements. You might spot your child vigorously flapping their hands, rocking back and forth, or maybe just spinning the wheels on a toy car over and over and over. To someone watching, it just looks like they're playing, but when a child is hitting that overload point, these movements get super narrow and intense. And here's the brilliant reason why. Repetitive input is predictable. It gives this highly soothing sense of order to a young nervous system that feels like it's completely losing control. Honestly, it's a lot like an adult tapping their foot or clicking a pen when they're stressed out.
And finally, sign number 5, the silent switch. Honestly, this one is often the most heartbreaking misconception in all of parenting. Your child might suddenly just stop protesting altogether and stare off into space with these listless, glazed-over eyes. Parents will often breathe this huge sigh of relief, thinking, oh good, thank goodness they are finally self-soothing. No, unfortunately no. This is actually a shutdown cry. Their internal system has essentially pulled the fuse to prevent a total crash. They haven't magically learned to self-soothe. Their little baby brain has simply run completely out of the energy required to even ask you for hump.
So, let's pivot to part 4, the 60-second reset. Here's how we restore the calm.
All right, so what exactly do we do when we actually spot these warning signs in the wild? To ground this in reality, let's look at the story of a mom named Sarah and her 2-year-old son, Leo. Sarah took little Leo to this massive family reunion. I mean, we're talking 20 brand new faces, super bright lights, and just intense echoing noise everywhere. Suddenly, Sarah noticed Leo showing 2 of the exact signs we just talked about. He started intensely hand flapping, and he was showing strong gaze aversion, flat out refusing to look at his grandma. Now, her initial completely normal parent instinct was to jump in and say, "Oh, Leo, don't be shy, go give grandma a big hug."
But then she remembered the sensory dashboard. She stopped, really looked at him, and realized, oh wow, Leo's volume is at a 10 right now? This right here represents a massive paradigm shift. Sarah realized that logic absolutely does not work when the amygdala, which is the brain's main threat center, takes over the driver's seat. So instead of pushing him to be polite and perform, she made the active choice to regulate his nervous system.
She used these exact steps for the reset, and you can too. Step 1, the 10-second pause. When you see your kids skidding, don't rush in with immediate fixes. Just pause. Step 2, reduce the input. Sarah actually took Leo into a quiet back bedroom and dimmed the lights. Step 3, get low to eye level. You never want to tower over an overloaded child. Why? Because physical dominance instantly triggers a threat response. But getting low, getting right eye to eye, that signals that you are a safe partner. And step 4, calm stillness. Sarah didn't talk, she didn't sing a lullaby, she just sat there quietly and let him borrow her heartbeat. And you know what? 10 minutes later, Leo is fully regulated. She literally stopped a 2-hour meltdown just by acting on a simple 30-second observation. Incredible, right?
Okay, part 5, building a brain bond. How to be that safe base for your child.
So how does all of this build into something way bigger than just dodging a tantrum at the grocery store? Well, when you adopt this neurological approach, it completely changes your entire relationship with your child. You start to understand that what we call naughty behavior is so often just a temporarily full brain. You realize that your child literally has to borrow your regulated calm nervous system to survive their own crazy sensory input. By catching these subtle signs early on, the gaze aversion, the back arching, the pause cry, you stop reacting to the storm. Instead, your steady, calming presence actually proves to them that their chaotic internal world is manageable. You become the ultimate safe base that they can always return to.
So I really want to leave you with this question to chew on today. Which of these subtle signs have you already noticed in your own home? Does your child tend to completely shut down? Or do they maybe fall into that highly rhythmic pause cry pattern we talked about? I challenge you to keep a close eye on that sensory dashboard this week, because by simply observing these quiet little signals, you are taking a massive, incredibly powerful step toward building the deep neurological connection that your child truly needs. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer today, and hey, enjoy observing that amazing, rapidly growing brain of theirs.